the seventh area of focus in June of this year. Think of it as saving the planet for our future generations. The talk today is about the journey by Phillips 66 toward the process and environmental excellence. Our speaker, Mr. Carl Perkins, is the general manager of the Ferndale Refinery for Phillips 66, a diversified energy manufacturing and logistics company. He has 29 years of experience in various projects and refining leadership roles. Previously, Mr. Perkins served as general manager at San Francisco, operations manager at Billings, Ponca City and Alliance Refineries, maintenance manager at Billings and Los Angeles Refineries, and technical manager at the Borger Refinery. Carl earned a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering from Kansas State University in 1991. Carl, welcome to the Rotary Club of Bellingham, and we look forward to your presentation. You have the floor, and Mark Netto will be advancing your slides on your cue. Take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Paul?
Yes, sure can.
Okay, great. So if you guys go ahead and pull the slides up, and while you're doing that, I'll give a little bit more background. Again, I grew up in Southeast Kansas. I'm the baby of 9. Again, they're on a farm and ranch. This move here to Washington is my 13th move with the company. My wife and I, after only being up here for about 4 months, have declared the Ferndale area to be our favorite location. Prior to that, Montana was my favorite. And for hers, even though she's a Montana native, her area was Oklahoma or down in the Louisiana area. So we are glad to be up here, happy here. And for my presentation today, again, I want to talk about our journey around operations excellence. And before going to the next slide, just give you a little bit of background. Again, everything we do at a refinery, whether it's our practices, our procedures, policies, or even the people here, everything we do affects our safety performance and our environmental performance for the refinery and for the company. And so what I'm going to present today is a little bit of background from a corporate perspective, because this presentation I'm about ready to give has been shared out and will be shared on an annual basis to our CAP members as well. So if you go ahead and advance to the next slide. So right now, who we are as Phillips 66, we have our 3 core values around safety, around honor and commitment. The theme around today is around the safety theme as we protect each other, our environment, and our communities. Those are underpinned by our energy and actions. And those 4 energy actions are shown at the bottom of the page, kind of booked in for today's presentation, working for the greater good, where again, we live our values and we earn the confidence of our business partners, our community, and our coworkers. And also, we're always there to be the best, not only in Phillips 66, but also the best in the industry. And we strive to achieve excellence, specifically around the safety, health, and environment portion. So going on to the next page, just wanted to start. This is kind of a comparison on a safety perspective. Okay, as I said, everything's underpinned. If you have a safety incident, you may end up having an environmental incident as well. We are measured against all of our competition, whether it's refining or whether it's petrochemical business, out there what's called an AFPM. And you can see as a general industry, if you look in the middle on the right-hand side, where it says all manufacturing at a 4.0, that's a total recordable rate. So a recordable rate of 1 would be 1 injury for about 100 employees for the entire year. And you can see where refineries are about a 0.7, followed by the chemical manufacturing is about a 0.5. In 2018 there, that number that we showed there, that's a 0.17. Okay, Phillips 66 was and remains the leader in the industry. The head of the AFPM, the CEO there, had a meeting with the Chemical Safety Board and said refining is the safest manufacturing industry as a whole in the United States. And Phillips 66 is the safest performer. And they measure us against a lot of statistics out there. and they give us these distinguished safety awards. And for the last 4 years, a Phillips refinery has led in there. We're Lake Charles in 2016, and then 17 with our Bayway refinery near New York City, and our Ponca City refinery in Oklahoma. And in 2019, we had we were one of 6 total refineries that received it, and 5 of those were Phillips 66. Again, it's really the cream of the crop out there. And you can see on the lower right-hand chart there of all the other petrochemicals or refineries there, and what we show. Again, that is a 2018. Where are we today? 2 years later, that right-hand red bar there is a 0.10, almost a 70% plus improvement in our total recordability. If you go on to the next page there. So some of the fundamentals that we have is what we call process safety and operation excellence. We measure ourselves against the competitors, what we call tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 process safety incident. Tier 1, if you go on the right-hand side, what defines that? If I have a refinery or a chemical plant and we have a fire and there's over $100,000 worth of damage, that's a tier 1 process safety incident. Or if we have a chemical release that hospitalized someone, even if for just 1 day, that's a tier 1, even if that release may be steam, for example. Or if we have a chemical release over a certain threshold. If you continue down on that right-hand side there, you can see the historical trend for Phillips 66 in blue and the industry average in with the green diamonds there. Again, we had trailed on, in 2016, we were 5 times better than the industry out there. We maintained that. Even though the industry improved, we were still maintaining that. We did have a poor year in 2019 as kind of a one-off year, and we were back to our exceptional performance here in 2020. Our focus areas around this, if you have a chemical release, you will always typically have an environmental. And so this is one of the key focuses to make sure these big things don't happen. It's a never-ending practice around risk reduction activities. There's a lot of stuff around mechanical integrity. Mechanical integrity means is we have equipment, we have piping, we have thousands of instruments out here, maintaining those at a high level and a high degree. Because any one of those fail, it may end up in environmental, it may end up in a tier 1 or something bad happening. We have people out here. People do work. We want to make sure that when people do work, they're following consistent procedures and they do quality work. Because the quality of the work we do out here on the maintenance and on the construction activities affect the future. And if you do poor craftsmanship, you may end up with a leak in the future. And so we focus on that. We're all people. We're all prone to mistakes. But how can we put layers of protection? How can we take learnings from previous incidents and make sure we put another layer of protection to ever prevent that from occurring again? We also focus on what's called process safety management audits to compare ourselves against all of our competitors out there as well. And if you wouldn't mind advancing to the next slide. Okay, so how does this contribute around the environmentals? Okay, so starting with the graph on the right-hand side, reflecting back to over 10 years ago, the blue is an environmental event over a certain threshold defined by EPA, defined by NOACA up here, or the state of Washington, whatever agency it may be, is do you have an event that exceeded a certain threshold? So again, blue is air, the yellow there is water. There's a few things you see around waste there, and then spills being that in red. And you can see that trend over the years decreasing there. I will say in about end of 2015, EPA came out with new requirements. 2017. Came out with new requirements in regards to EPA for flares and other refinery sector rules out there that have been implemented. And that actually made the blue go up, because where some previously were not environmental events, now they are. But have we taken learnings from those? And if you look at our year-to-date, this is actually through September. It's what's been shared during our third quarter reporting for the company. it shows where we are with regards to environmental. Just to reflect back on 10 years there, we've had a 60% reduction in our NOx or our SOx emissions there. We spent over $2.7 billion on environmental projects in the last 5 years. Everything around environmental is underpinned by this operation excellence, where we've got a committed leadership, our committed supervisors and employees around operation excellence, setting clear expectations and accountability around those. But when things happen, even if they're small, we need to investigate those. We need to correct those, follow up and audit to make sure they're sustainable. Then we look for innovative ways out there. These charts that you show here, these are around kind of these lagging indicators. We also need to look at leading indicators, things out there that may come up in the future. And so we got to look at those, and we have environmental operating limits to help drive continuous improvement. So I'm going to pause by, so if you look on the right-hand side for 2020 and you add those up, you're about 170 some there. For our site, just for reference, we've had 9 of those 172 are from this facility. And that's about an average for the last few years for our site. I don't want you to go back to the previous slide, but on the previous slide, when we were talking about the Tier 1 process safety events, I was remiss in saying that we have not had a process safety event at the Ferndale Refinery for almost 4 years. Our last one was on February 10th of 2017. So you can advance to the next slide at this time. Okay, underpinning, again, environmental activities is helping make sure that we're maintaining activities. We have 3 categories of spend around maintaining our facilities, our assets. The first is a routine maintenance we spend day to day. That's that red bar on the right-hand side. And then on certain frequency, we take parts of the units down and we do what's called a turnaround or a maintenance outage. That's the tan section in the middle. And then the yellow section, the bar right above that, we call it capacity maintenance. It's really a definition from a IRA perspective, IRS perspective, of capital investment. It's the lower 2 sections are expense, the upper section is capital. You can see some of the projects up to our right that's around the capacity maintenance, that capital spend. We're investing on infrastructure around instrumentation, control systems, electrical system upgrades, because a number of our electrical system issues that we may have may call an environmental event. We've had where we've lost power from Puget Sound, and it will cause an environmental event. So what can we do here locally to prevent that from impacting us? We have to replace equipment out here, whether they're tanks, whether they're vessels, to keep and maintain the safety and the environmental of the site. If you look at those trends from 2007 to 2019, it's well exceeding the inflationary rate there. So going from about $1 billion a year upwards to 1.7 billion. Over the last 4 years alone in these categories, we spent 4.1 billion in that yellow category by itself. And that yellow category, looking out for the next 5 years, is about $3.6 billion. So go ahead and go on to the next slide here. Okay, the graph on the right-hand side is used for the top 2 sections on the left-hand side. So future around safety, we're going to spend about another $500 million there in the next 5 years. You can see what areas they're going to focus on. On maintenance spend out there, whether it's expense maintenance, capital maintenance, or turnarounds, about $9 billion. And then what's not reflected on the chart to the right is our activities around our environmental, social governance activities, which is really the kind of what I'll go to in a second on the next page, is really around our ESG, our renewable fuels, our greenhouse gas reductions, solar, wind, and other environmental social governance programs. So if you add all of up this entire page, if we put the ESG on here, would be about $11 billion that we're focusing on here around things that affect our operation excellence for our refinery to help maintain both from a safety perspective, but also from an environmental perspective in the next 5 years. So let's go to the last slide, which is really what you guys probably want to hear a little bit more about. It's not so much what we've done, it's where we're going to spend and where we're going to focus our effort going forward. So you can see the kind of the 8 categories that we're focusing as a company. And some of this is where we're focusing here in Ferndale as well. Under renewable fuels, doing a number of projects. Unfortunately, our green apple project here had some complications in regards to permitting, and so it's currently put on the back burner for now. But as a company, we are still leveraging those areas that are supportive of our projects. In California at our Rodeo facility, we'll be converting that entire facility to a green refinery. We'll make green diesel, jet, gasoline, green natural gas, and what's called actually blue hydrogen down there. We're also focusing and have been for decades in electrical batteries. Most people probably don't realize that our premium coke that our company makes is used in the battery manufacture. If you have a battery, you have a cathode and you have an anode. The anode portion of that is required to use either natural or premium coke for that carbon. And so a lot of places they mine for it, or they take this premium coke and make that. So we have 2 facilities, our Humber facility in England and our Lake Charles refinery in Louisiana that make premium coke to make batteries out there. On the energy conservation side, anything you can do to improve efficiency reduces greenhouse gas. It reduces CO2 emissions, okay? Our site, compared to all the other refineries in the United States, has achieved 7 of the last 8 years the EPA Energy Star. So if you buy a refrigerator and you see that little blue symbol that says Energy Star on there, they do that same ranking for refineries. And so again, for 4 years in a row, but 7 out of the last 8 years, we have achieved that top quartile performance as the EPA has recognized us. So we continue to do projects around that, and we'll continue to do projects here in Ferndale around that and every other refinery that we own and every midstream organization as well. Carbon capture, this is around CO2 sequestration, which also reduces greenhouse gas. Most sites that they're going to use this will be areas that it's already concentrated. If you have a hydrogen plant, you typically have a stream of high CO2, and we're looking at projects to sequester that CO2. Additionally, is around the green electricity. We're focusing on solar and wind. We've announced 2 projects, one in Rodeo, California, and one in Palm City, Oklahoma, to make and install a solar farm there to supply a good portion of the power needed for those refineries to operate. At every site, we're doing activities around waste reduction, either to reduce or recycle. We're doing projects here as well at this site on even projects for minimizing whether it's hazardous waste, non-hazardous waste, or even as a company where we have a joint venture with Chevron Phillips, is to eliminate any spills of plastics to the environment, and then also working on programs to recycle plastics as well. Under water conservation, that's typically our drier facilities such as California and the Midwest, where we're looking at reducing, reusing, and recycling. But even up here in the Pacific Northwest, where we have plenty of water, we are still focusing on programs around that as well. The last item there is around our habitat protection and restorations, both in our coastal, our wetlands, and our rivers. Up here at the Ferndale Refinery, we're focusing on our conservation around wetlands here or nearby the refinery, and then continued focus and partnerships here with the river and creeks come into the Nooksack. We got 1 salmon restoration activities, and also partner with the Whatcom land conservation for one of the other rivers as well. So these are our kind of our future activities, and I'm kind of at my time contract for presentation. So at this time, I'll open up for any questions that anybody may have. And keep in mind, I'm happy to come back anytime in the future and give continued additional presentations in our environmental stewardship.
Any questions?
Carl, I have a question. This is Mark Mennel. Can you say more about what a green diesel or green jet fuel is, or what makes it green? Or what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at our Rodeo project that we're doing down in California in the San Francisco Bay Area, we are taking used cooking oils. We're taking fats from tallow from beef or pork. We are taking soybean oil, and we're taking that material in and processing it and making renewable. There's renewable diesel and there's biodiesel. Renewable diesel is a direct substitute. What we make on that diesel can actually be put right into a diesel engine. Okay, I always say biodiesel is like an ethanol to gasoline. You can only blend so much ethanol into gasoline before you start having issues with your engine. That's the same way for biodiesel. Renewable diesel, it's a direct substitute. So it's made from those animal fats, those byproducts there, and we're making green diesel. And that same unit makes jet fuel as well. And so the jet we make off that unit will be renewable or green as well.
Okay, so I understand the green in terms of renewable. Is it also green in terms of the emission levels?
Yeah, so the emission levels, if we take that refinery, for example, that's being converted from a crude processing refinery to a renewable, okay, there will be over almost a 90% reduction in emissions from the refinery. And then the emissions you have from the gallon of fuel is about 50% lower emissions from that 1 gallon of diesel fuel versus a diesel fuel made from crude oil.
Yeah.
Mr. Perkins, I've got a couple of questions. The first one's fairly simple because I simply may have missed it in the introduction. But how many years have you been out at the Ferndale Refinery?
So John, I just joined the team out here in June.
Okay.
Okay, I have again about nearly 30 years, going on 30 years with the company, and in a wide variety of refineries and locations.
So we can't blame you for these 10 years of declining or improving results. I was thinking that maybe somewhere in there you came in and the effect of your leadership was there. The second thing I read in the Seattle Times this morning that Airbus is committing 5 years and a substantial amount of money to developing hydrogen power for airplanes. I don't know if you know anything about that or what your thoughts are about that as a potential future for the airline industry.
Well, John, that's the first I've heard about a hydrogen-fueled aircraft. I know in the Bay Area they have hydrogen-fueled vehicles for cars. They also have hydrogen fuels for boats, but I'm not aware of the technology around the airplanes, if that's for short duration flights or long duration flights.
Yeah, well,
with regards to
the technology doesn't exist currently, which is why they're investing and trying to develop it. But okay, thank you.
Okay, but so John, with regards to those numbers around the environmental there, those are the trends, the summation of all refineries. So yes, I did have some contribution at multiple sites. That $3.7 billion that has been invested over the last 5 years, I've been involved in a number of those projects at a number of sites.
Thank you.
Carl, I've heard an interesting story this morning on NPR about the pivot that many oil companies are making towards different future, whether they're going to be focusing on the petrochemical side of things or they're going to be getting into entirely different areas of industrial work. How do you see that happening as electric cars come in and alternative fuels become more common, or alternative sources of energy become more common, solar and wind and what have you? Where do you see Phillips going in 20, 30, 40 years?
No, Phillips 66 touts itself as an energy company. We've been working, as I said, on electric batteries. We've been doing that for decades, probably unbeknownst to a lot of people. We're also working on solar voltaic sales out there, and we've been investing in that. We've been investing in the companies, the car companies out there around electric. And so we want to be there to provide energy, regardless of it's from fossil fuels or if it's from alternative fuels as well. So our company has started that investment from the renewable fuels. I was actually involved in a project, Chuck, back in 2007 in Borger, Texas, where we were making renewable out of beef tallows. And so we were taking beef tallow in a plant and making renewable diesel at that time. So we've been working in this field for well over 13 years. And we do see there's a place for both, okay? We do know that long haul diesel may be going to renewable, but it'll still be a hydrocarbon, okay, whether it's renewable soybean or corn or otherwise will come from that. But I will say, as a world, there'll always kind of be the need. There's probably over 1 billion people out there that's kind of living now in poverty. Over time, as those people come from poverty to middle class, the demands for fuels will increase. And I think there's a portion and a part for both out there. But we do need, as a company, and we're supportive around, again, our environmental stewardship, is how do we look on carbon CO2 capture? How do we lower our emissions per gallon? All those things we are investing time and effort on right now as part of
Carl,
we may not have the absolute solution, but we'll be part of the solution.
Carl, this is Larry Halgren. Can you tell us what kind of process or progress you're making in the solution to how to reduce the plastics that are burying us?
So I can share a little bit there, Larry. So that's part of our Chevron Phillips joint venture. I have limited knowledge on that, but I do know that we're working on technology on recycling that, chemically recycling, versus today where they grind it up and they make other products or they melt it. So we're looking at other processes around taking plastics and chemically taken back to the original state so we can reuse in the original. Because typically they can only be used maybe one more time, but if we can take the technology and make it repetitively go back to its original format, and we can make that plastic bottle or whatever it is over again and again and again, then we can solve that solution out there. And that's the area we're focusing on.
Thank you.
Great. I need to bring this to a close. How about a big round of applause for our speaker for today? Thank you very much. We appreciate you. We appreciate your company and all you do for our community. Thank you.
Okay. You're very welcome.
Before I give you guys a COVID report, I just want to thank the people that made this meeting possible for all of us. It's like, there we go. I'm there somewhere. Paula and Sandy and I were your greeters. Mark Niddle was the AV coordinator. John Harris helped with music. Arlie Norman, our Tatler editor, or sorry, Tatler reporter. Catherine Reardon, our Tatler editor. Dennis Williams, our Minister of Fun. Peter did a great job with the invocation, and we have a copy of that, which we'll put on our site. Paul Gray introduced the program. Bacchus, our newest member, welcome to you. Thanks to Doug Cole for the introduction, Tim Ferriss for the charge of membership, and anyone else who I might have forgotten. Definitely thanks to Shauna and also to Jen for the reports. And now just a quick COVID update before you go on with your day. We had a pretty good size spike in positive test results over the last couple of weeks. It looks like it's quieting down a little bit over the last few days. Overall, though, the community has done relatively well compared to other communities. Our overall positive test result percentage remains at about 2.5%. There have been a total of 152 people that have been hospitalized. There was a recent death at the hospital, but it was a patient who came in with do not resuscitate orders. If you remember back from when I was program chair, I covered the difference between do not resuscitate orders and a POLST form, where on the POLST, you could say that you didn't want extraordinary care, but in somebody who's got DNR orders, they're not receiving essentially any care. So if somebody goes into the hospital and has a positive COVID test result along with their other comorbidities, and their instructions are that they are not to be resuscitated and not to receive treatment, and they die at the hospital, that's still counted as a hospital death. When I talked to the house manager today, she could not remember the last patient that was in the hospital that died that did not have do not resuscitate orders. In other words, essentially every patient who is being treated at the hospital is surviving. There are currently 16 patients total at the hospital, 4 at ICU level of care. That's a high number. The highest that the hospital has been throughout this entire process for a record was 20 at a time and 5 at ICU level of care. So we are still dealing with the virus in this community on a very active basis. And in other parts of the country, I think they're struggling a lot more than we're struggling here. we still have at least 16% of the hospital beds that are open, should there be more people that need to be hospitalized. The majority of our cases remain in the of our new positive test results remain in the 20 to 39-year-old age group, where they are rarely hospitalized. We still are seeing 3 times the rate of positive tests relative to population in our Hispanic community, and about 2/3 the rate of positive tests relative to percentage for whites in our community. We don't have a large minority population, so the predominant folks who are still getting positive test results are white, but it is disproportionately hitting minority populations here and elsewhere. And that is a very fast rundown. I refer everybody to continue to look at the Whatcom County COVID dashboard if you want more up-to-date numbers. That's really the best information that's available. And in talking to my colleagues, it's really better here in Washington than a lot of states are putting forward. Although there are definitely things I'd like to see that are not included. Before
Gary,
I bring this to a close, last minute.
Can we
question.
ask one question?
Sure. Yeah.
This new, I guess you'd call it application that our governors put out there on our phones. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't really know anything about it. I think it's going to be a personal preference as to whether you want to participate in it or not. If you decide not to, you need to not only say no. Hang on just one second, I'm getting buzzed here.
I've
Not
already
only
said
say
no. What else do you do?
You can turn off the notifications on your phone.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to continue to get notifications. So it wasn't enough to just say no. They can't track you if you say no, but you're still going to get notifications until you go into your settings and turn that off.
Thank you.
Okay, not hearing anyone else. I wish everybody a healthy, happy week. Remember Pearl Harbor, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you for being Rotarians. Thank you for everything you do. Remember to send money for Happy Bucks and for Minister of Fun, and to get your pledges in for our major project. And with that, we're adjourned. See y'all next week.